Travis Reier and Charlie Potter, the BamaOnline.com staff from outside Thursday's practice at the University of Alabama. Threatening skies out there, Charlie, so we couldn't let you get wet. The potential of Charlie getting drenched he wears these expensive threads. We can't do that to him. So we came inside into Coleman Coliseum to talk about Thursday's practice a little bit during the viewing period, some of the things that we noted. And we're also going to sort of preview Saturday's scrimmage, hit on a couple of areas where this team needs to solidify itself in the coming days. So let's start with today's practice. So from an injury standpoint, a lot of things from yesterday. We haven't done this since Wednesday, so a lot of guys that we've seen in the last day or two that we hadn't seen with classes going into session. Cam Sims, the wide receiver out there with the knee injury, doing a little bit of stuff on the side mostly. Anthony Jennings, the true freshman outside linebacker, doing some things in non-contact status with the outside linebackers. And I guess Joshua Casher, the center guard, also out there doing some stuff at his position. Anything else stand out to you, some other guys?
I didn't see him out there yesterday, but today Raheem Falcons was back out there. He wasn't doing anything at all. He had on a black jersey and was in full uniform, but I think it was his
left foot boot.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't remember if it was a left or right, but he was in a left walking boot. He wasn't doing anything. Other than that, Robert Foster and Chris Black looked like they're coming back a little better. Robert Foster's at the head of one receiver line, and he looked fine today. Chris Black still not going full speed, but he looks to be recovering pretty well. No Parker Barano after his odd shower incident yesterday.
Not to laugh at it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a weird situation.
What else can go wrong at wide receiver?
Yeah,
Guys
exactly.
are dropping.
But it looks like some of those guys are coming back. Cam Sims, even, I was surprised at how well he's moving. I don't expect to see him anytime soon, if at all, this season. But it's still impressive to see how he's moving out there. And then Jake Coker, he was back at the front of the quarterback line, and he looked to be fine. He was doing some rollout things. They weren't doing too much of what we saw, but he didn't look to be limited much at all today.
I noticed Reggie Ragland there at the end of the viewing period. Pretty good-sized knee brace on that right knee. It wasn't a sleeve, it was a brace. He wasn't in a black non-contact jersey. That could change as soon as we walk out of there. So it will be interesting in the day or two coming up to see what they do with him in the scrimmage. You obviously don't need to take any chances if it is anything of semi-significance, which we don't know. But and so that kind of leads us into Saturday's scrimmage, and from an injury standpoint and areas of weakness where they're trying to improve, it starts obviously at quarterback. We just talked about Coker and his situation coming back from the toe issue. Does he scrimmage Saturday? I guess that's what's going to be interesting to learn from Nick Saban.
Yeah, Saturday's scrimmage is big, and just from watching him in the brief time we get to watch him, he looks good, but I still don't know if he's ready to actually partake in the scrimmage. Saban still said he would be day-to-day and probably out a few days. He probably doesn't do much after we leave. But you never know. Like I said, it's a critical point in the season. Game week's coming up. It's 2.5 weeks away, less than that. And this is where Blake Sims made his move last year, as I said earlier. And if Coker can't go, it opens the door for a guy like Alec Morris and Cooper Bateman, who Saban raved about yesterday from the scrimmage. And that's pretty telling. He talked about them. He said Coker did some okay things, even though he has that toe issue. And then Blake Barnett, even though he needs to develop some more, he mentioned him. Didn't mention David Cornwell at all. And I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah, and that's where we're at. We're left to sort of parse words and statements. That's what we know basically on the situation with Coker. Quarterbacks are off limits in terms of contact and scrimmage work anyway. Practice in general, they're off limits. But we haven't really seen him do a lot of the heavy footwork that's required at the position. It's not just the risk of it getting stepped on, or you got to be able to plant your feet, drive your feet. There's some athleticism involved there in pass drops and doing things like that that we just haven't seen him do, that we don't know if he can do, and we won't find out probably until Saturday. So we also talk about the wide receiver spots because of all the injuries there and guys who have a chance going into this scrimmage of, if not establishing themselves as top 5 guys even in the rotation, of at least sending the message that if something does happen to a guy in that 5, if Chris Black has a continuing issue, if one of those outside guys like a Robert Foster has a problem, they can step in and do the job. It's been a good situation right now, it seems like, for Richard Mullaney, the Oregon State transfer.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Black, I feel like we've had to mention him in every practice report of not doing much, and that, again, that opens up a door for Richard Mulaney, and it was opening a door for Parker Barno, and now, like you said, those injuries are piling up, and, I mean, you could potentially see a guy like Calvin Ridley see more reps in the slot. I mean, he's shown athleticism, that speed in the slot is what Alabama needs. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but with so many guys battling injuries and not knowing if they're going to scrimmage, you could start to see some movement around in that area too.
Makes it hard for the quarterbacks too.
Yeah.
I mean, you're trying to evaluate quarterbacks, and you got wide receivers that are limited or out. In fairness to those quarterbacks, it hasn't been an optimum situation for them at the receiver spots, especially when you're replacing the guys they're replacing. Defensively, the back seven, I think that there's a lot of optimism. You sense a confidence, a buzz coming from this team, this staff. Nick Saban, when he was asked last Saturday if the secondary had improved, he said a lot, and really went in depth on some guys who have performed well, and seems like they figured some things out, or they think they have. That left corner spot, still continue to see guys rotating in and out back there. Minka Fitzpatrick, we continue to see the true freshman and some of the nickel stuff, dime stuff. So can they really put the pieces together and solve a couple of those spots, not just at corner, but in the nickel and dime? Maurice Smith, a guy who's very prominent in that situation right now too, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, today it was pretty much what we've seen, for the past couple of days with Marlon at left corner. That seems to be sticking for the moment, but as we've seen all fall camp, which fall camp's over, but all fall practice, they're not afraid to rotate guys in and out. Today, the only mix-up that we saw was, I saw Ronnie Harrison and Hootie Jones working opposite of Eddie Jackson at the safety spot where Geno Smith had been. So I think it's going to continue to revolve, but as you said, Saban seems to be high on these guys, especially the young guys. It's unbelievable to hear what he has to say about Minka Fitzpatrick. Saban's not a guy that likes to call out freshmen. Exactly.
I mean, we're not asking him about, hey, what do you think of Minka Fitzpatrick?
You bring up the secondary, and Minka's one of the first guys that he mentions.
First corner.
Yeah, and it's just it's crazy to think that, but he's shown. His teammates rave about him, and he's shown that he's here to compete.
That's what says a lot to me. Is you just said it. His teammates.
Yeah.
When do upperclassmen talk about freshmen in such a positive light? And typically it's because they're boneheads, for lack of a better term. They're not mature. They goofy a little bit. Fitzpatrick seems to go against the grain from that standpoint. Any other areas? I think the kicking game too. I think you worry about Adam Griffith. I mean, that situation he has with the back, it doesn't sound like it's fixed. It sounds like it's kind of something he's going to have to deal with. And so, does Gunnar Rayborn become even more important in that situation? J.K. Scott can handle some placements. That's another area that's kind of quietly gone under the radar, but Griffith's situation is, I wouldn't say dire, but it's concerning. Yeah,
I mean, a back injury always just seems to linger with you for what could be the rest of your life, and he said he's been dealing with it since high school, and he told me back at Fan Day that he was about 95%, which sounds good, but at the same time, it's a back injury that could flare up and drop down to whatever it does at any point. For me, I'll be interested to see how this right guard position keeps playing out, because today we saw Alphonse Taylor up there with the first team again, and Nick Saban was asked specifically yesterday about Rosh Pierschbacher and Dominic Jackson, and he went out of his way to say, don't count out Shank.
Right.
And because, he has been plagued with injuries in the past, but he has shown promise. I mean, he was battling Leon Brown for the first team right guard spot last year.
Made a start or two last year.
And, I mean, that's just a thing to keep an eye on. Other than him and the right guard spot, I mean, it's been pretty consistent. So that's interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, good competition there. Tight end, I think you still got some things going on perhaps. O.J. Howard should be the number one guy, but Ty Fornoy Smith looks good. Physically, he looks capable. And you know what they're going to get out of Dakota Ball. Maybe a little bit of a surprise as a receiver, but a couple of other areas where competition could be in play on Saturday. You got any? We good?
Yeah, I think that's
going to the Alabama Shakes tonight.
We are. Yeah, gotta get out of here.
Drive-by truckers are the marquee act, even though they're opening.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody tell you anything different. And I love the Shakes, but yeah, we're going to hit that up tonight. So excuse us if you see us down there. For Charlie Potter, I'm Travis Reier. Keep it right here on BamaOnline.com for continuing coverage of the Alabama Crimson Tide.